So this is our scorecard in terms of Connect Nigeria and the infrastructure. We've moved from 0.5% of fixed line tele density to 1.8%. Our mobile subscription density is now up to 96% from 68.5%. We have almost double the number of Nigerians that have access to the internet, and we've also done quite reasonably well. I think when the USPF sites keep getting delivered, you see a much better trend in the access of the rural population to the internet. We've brought down the cost of broadband from 93,000 naira. This is cost per 3 gigabits package in a year, 93,000 naira to about 55,000 naira, and the penetration has moved from 6% when the broadband plan was approved and we've begun implementation to 8% now. So again, we're going to see the momentum increasing, and where we are right now, we are very strongly and well positioned to achieve our 30% target by 2017. I think it's important to also talk about NIGCOMSAT, which is a government-owned company that owns the satellite NIGCOMSAT 1R that is providing complementary infrastructure to what the telcos are doing. NIGCOMSAT is government-owned, but it is commercially run. It complements our fiber and terrestrial network in Nigeria. It has a total of 40 transponders. Again, this is just very technical terms that really just talks about the capacity of the satellite to provide broadband and communication services. So it's quite a large satellite and covers several of the bands, KU, KA, C-band, which means it's also a very versatile satellite with a footprint across most of sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, and Asia as well. NIGCOMSAT is working very closely with the other agencies, NITSTA, the USPF, to provide internet access to some of the rural IT centers that we've built, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But very importantly, NIGCOMSAT is also a key commercial partner. As we move from analog to digital broadcasting, the NIGCOMSAT platform is going to be a very important way to deliver content used via the signal distributor to all Nigerian homes. I think it's also quite important to mention the fact that NIGCOMSAT is being run as a commercial entity. Just to remind you that the Stephen Orson report had recommended that federal government privatizes NIGCOMSAT, and we have accepted that recommendation, and NIGCOMSAT is now on a path to privatization. I just wanted to show you here the kind of revenues that we're seeing from NIGCOMSAT. In 2012, 3.6 million naira, and that was really at the beginning of the launch of the satellite. In 2013, we improved to 263 million naira. And in 2014, we're now on 648 million naira. We expect that to begin to continue to increase. And what this means is that the likelihood of a successful privatization is much higher now, because we have proven that NIGCOMSAT can generate revenue, it can be a successful commercial entity, and we can now begin to attract investments for the privatization, for eventual privatization of NIGCOMSAT over the next few years. Let me move on to the next priority, which is about connecting Nigerians. Remember, the first priority was Connect Nigeria. This is about connecting Nigerians, ensuring that when we have this, as we build this infrastructure, Nigerians can buy devices, mobile phones, tablets, computers, and they can use these devices to access the internet and get all the benefits that the internet provides. What do connected Nigerians do? Connected Nigerians use this infrastructure to enhance economic activity. They use this infrastructure to improve the delivery of social outcomes like health and education. They use this infrastructure to basically educate themselves, but also to entertain themselves. And let me just give you some examples of what we're seeing connected Nigerians do, and you begin to get a sense of how important building this infrastructure is for this country. Connected Nigerians, when we talk about the Ebola epidemic, can I have the next slide, please? When we talk about the Ebola epidemic, information and communication technologies were instrumental in helping us to stop this epidemic the way that Nigeria very successfully did. Being able to track contacts, being able to gather all this information and make sense out of it, sending messages to 100 million Nigerians about washing your hands and the hygiene requirements to stop Ebola. All of these things really helped us in stopping this epidemic and ensuring that it didn't get beyond the fatalities that we had, unfortunately, and this ICT is very important to this. We also use Facebook, to connect with each other, to share information. I think that we have the largest community of Facebook users in the whole of sub-Saharan, I think it's actually the whole of Africa. And at this particular time that we're in right now, where we're talking about campaigning and elections, I don't think there's any self-respecting politician today that doesn't have a Facebook page. And I'm glad to say that it was President Jonathan that actually started this movement of getting politicians to connect with citizens using ICT infrastructure, Facebook. And so we connect with each other. We create new businesses. You'll see some of the logos that I'll talk about them, Idea, LoadPad. These are hubs that are creating exciting new Nigerian businesses. We use infrastructure to switch transactions. Every time you go to an ATM to take money out, this company is the one that switches your transactions between your bank and the ATM if it's not the bank, if it's not the ATM or the bank that you're using. So, and this InterSwitch company is one of the fastest growing companies in the whole of Africa, not just Nigeria. So this is what Nigerians do. So you're seeing that information and communication technologies are becoming an inherent part of the way that we do business, the way that we entertain ourselves, our lifestyles. And so slowly but surely, we're becoming a digital economy, one that is more competitive, one that can take its place in a global economy because we're using ICTs much more effectively now. What have been our own interventions in this particular area? One thing we did when the ministry was created, we looked around and we thought, who would benefit the most from this infrastructure or this connectivity that really isn't benefiting today? And I think Nigerian students, we decided that Nigerian students would be the ones that would benefit the most. Students that don't have access to this very powerful tool of the internet to get information from anywhere in the world, whether it is journals or research or even connecting with other universities, I think we're doing them a great disadvantage. And so we started to intervene in this area. We collaborated with the Ministry of Education and the World Bank to deploy fiber optic to 17 universities. Today we have 1.4 million students in 27 federal universities that are now connected to a national research and education network. And what it means is that they can collaborate with each other, they can do joint research projects, they can share information, not only with themselves, but with the rest of the world, because we're moving into connecting the National Research and Education Network to the West and Central African Research and Education Network, WACREN, and of course to the global RAN community. And what it means is that Nigerian students will now be part of a global community of educators and learners. The second phase, we will be able to impact 3.4 million students in polytechnics as we bring them onto this national infrastructure. We're also focused on on secondary schools. Our school knowledge centers is the means by which, again, using our universal service provision funds, we look at public schools that are in some of the rural areas who really don't have any access to this infrastructure. And what we do in these public schools is that we put in place a computer lab for them, about 50 to 100 computers. We put internet capacity, and they're able to use this labs not only to complement their education in the traditional subjects, but to also even do research and projects. As we speak today, there are 1,552 secondary schools that have benefited from the schools' knowledge centers, and that means that about 1.4 million students that have access to the internet who wouldn't, if not familiar with this project, until we're able to really bring the internet to every single school in Nigeria. Also, thank you. The National IT Development Agency, which is really one of the main agencies of the ministry to propagate the utilization of ICTs, is doing quite a lot in ensuring that Nigerian students have access to this infrastructure. And also the Tertiary Institutions Access Project, the IT centers in tertiary institutions, they have done about 271 so far. 6 federal universities have also benefited from this infrastructure, and they're the ones that are listed there. Public access venues. So we're not only putting these labs or these computers and internet access in schools, we're also looking at the larger Nigerian community, where there are people that really cannot afford to buy a PC or a smartphone, but who would also benefit from having access to the internet as we deliver more and more government services on this infrastructure. NISTA has helped in building what we call the rural IT centers. There are about 395 centers all across the country. We couldn't show you on the map. All across the country, 395 rural IT centers, basically a bank of computers, access to the internet, and a couple of people in there helping people through and teaching them on how to use the internet. We have we have the potential to impact about 2 million Nigerians with this infrastructure that we've built. We're also working it's an ICT for Challenged project, where we're training people with disabilities, because again, they can participate more actively in normal everyday life when they have access to this information and communication technology tools. And so 51 beneficiaries have benefited from this training so far. The USPF is also doing its own bit. We have these community resource centers, which are similar to the RITCs in the that Minister is developing. 222 have been deployed across the country, and again, working with some of the more vulnerable groups of our society, they have 14 institutes for the physically challenged. So we are working to ensure, and this is all, it's an agenda of inclusion. So we're not only speaking about people who would naturally use the internet, but we're also looking at people who are vulnerable, the vulnerable groups of society, the people that are physically challenged, and we'll also talk about women and girls in a bit, because they're also some of the vulnerable groups in our society as well. I want to talk about NIPOS. When you say Connect Nigerians, NIPOS is a key pillar of this infrastructure that we're building, of this Connect Nigeria infrastructure. I know that when I talk about NIPOS, people always say, does NIPOS still exist? Well, NIPOS does still exist. And they are still superintending the postal sector, which includes, of course, the courier sector as well. It may surprise you to know that we are delivering, the industry delivers about 127 million letters, packages every year. And this is increasing. If you look at the slide, I don't know if you can read it, but in 2011 it was 21 million, 2012 48 million, 2013 89 million, and 2014 127 million. This is being fueled by the e-commerce phenomenon that we're seeing today. Because when we buy goods and services online, they've got to be delivered. And NIPOS really does play, not only NIPOS, but the courier industry, the DHLs, the EMS Speed Post, and all of that, they play a very important role in delivering these goods that are purchased online to a physical address where the purchaser can receive them. When we're talking about the postal sector and the fact that it's a key part of this transition to a digital economy, unless we look at NIPOS, because NIPOS is the regulator, it's also an operator of this postal sector, we need to look at NIPOS reform. Because yes, NIPOS is an old institution, but we need to ensure that NIPOS is well positioned to take advantage of all that is going on in this infrastructure right now. Just to give you a few examples of the kind of thing we're doing, the top is the old NIPOS, and there's a post office in the rural area. The bottom is the new NIPOS, and I hope you notice the satellite dish that is very close to the NIPOS, which means that they're connected. And so NIPOS has the largest retail infrastructure in the country today, bigger than any bank, any petrol station that you can think of. We have over 3,000 of these postal agencies, postal outlets, and physical post offices all across the country. And what we're doing is we're connecting all of them together, so NIPOS can be a part of this digital inclusion agenda, but also, very importantly, a financial inclusion agenda. The postal bill, which is currently again making its way to the National Assembly, will help us to reposition NIPOS and really separate the role of a regulator from the operator, so that NIPOS can very effectively compete with all the other courier operators. But we also ensure that we have a sound, robust regulatory environment through the regulator that will be created when this postal bill finally goes through, when it goes to the National Assembly. So NIPOS is supporting our inclusion projects. I remember I keep saying that ICTs provide us a tremendous platform for inclusion, regardless of where you live, how much you earn, whether you're a man or a woman. ICTs provide us that tremendous inclusion. One example here is a collaboration with NITDA. So again, what I should say is that while we talk about the different things that each agency is doing, we are also collaborating very closely within the agencies. NITDA and NIPOS have collaborated to support our digital inclusion agenda by putting a computer lab physically in a post office, because there's no point going to build another physical infrastructure. We have 3,000 of these things all across the country. So we launched an IT center in 2014 through a collaboration. This was in Song community in Adamawa State, and you can see some of the citizens of Song actually benefiting from that infrastructure. Financial inclusion is very important. As you know, just about 25 million Nigerians have bank accounts, and one of the major reasons is that the distance of a branch to a citizen is actually quite far. But most citizens the distance of a post office to citizens is much closer than the distance of a bank branch to a post office. And also, why even talk about physical branches at all when we have our mobile phones, which can actually be it can be a wallet, for instance, and that's what we're seeing that's happening right now. So NIPOS has been included. We're working with NIPOS. NIPOS is actually working to become part of the financial inclusion agenda of the Central Bank of Nigeria. using the NIPOS infrastructure to ensure that many more Nigerians are included financially. They have bank accounts, and once they have bank accounts, they have a track record of financial transactions. They can now begin to look at borrowing money. They can have insurance using their mobile phone. So this is what NIPOS is doing. So when you think about NIPOS, it's not just about the letter or package delivery capacity. NIPOS is really much more strategic and important in the new agenda for ICTs, because it's really helping us to ensure that we access or we get connected to the bigger rural community that we need to serve. We've also finalized the National Addressing Policy. This is a very important piece of social infrastructure. We need to not only know who we are, we need to know where we live. And so the National Addressing Policy has been approved by the Federal Executive Council. It has been supported in terms of implementation by the National Executive Council that consists of the governors. And we're now close to implementing, so that when we implement this policy, what it means is that every dwelling place and every commercial building in Nigeria will have a unique address. And you can imagine how important that is in terms of social infrastructure and really beginning to ensure that all Nigerians are included in whatever we're doing. Our third priority is about innovation, entrepreneurship, job creation, and what we called, in a broad manner, this local content. Because when you talk about local content, what we're looking at is to increase the capacity of our young people, our local industries, to participate in what is actually a very exciting, fast-growing, lucrative industry. And innovation really has become a very strong catalytic force to help us deliver sustainable jobs. We've seen it in many other countries, in India, in the US, in Israel. These are countries that have used innovation to drive their economies, and that's what we're trying to do right now. We're putting in place what I'd call a fledgling ecosystem of innovation. But the results that we've seen over the last 4 years have just been tremendous, and I'll give you some examples of that. The reason why we focus on innovation is because when you look at our youth demographics, we have a very high youth population. We're the most populous nation in Africa. And even when you take that, we have a very high youth population who we need to ensure that we engage in terms of jobs, job creation, innovation, entrepreneurship, to ensure that we use this youth bulge to drive national development and not really look at the negative aspects of the youth bulge. So there's a huge opportunity to turn this youth workforce, this youth population, who are really very comfortable, like we call them digital natives. They're very comfortable with the notion of ICTs and using ICTs to do almost everything, regardless of where they live. You'll be absolutely surprised. And we're using that to really drive this innovation and entrepreneurship. A number of things that we have done, you see the logo there, IDEA, which is the IT Developers Entrepreneurship Accelerator. This was an innovation hub that has been supported by government. We've catalyzed it. So we've built 2 innovation hubs, one in Calabar and one in Lagos. We put in all the infrastructure, all the equipment. We paid for the broadband to be in there. And we then turn this over to young Nigerians to run. And we're seeing some tremendous benefits coming out, tremendous results coming out of this. We've created about 200 direct and indirect jobs in the 18 months or so that these hubs have been in place. 8 startups, and when you hear tech startups, think about any of these companies. Alibaba, which is probably one of the most valuable companies in the world, was probably 5-6 years ago a tech startup. Oracle, Microsoft, Google, at some point in the past, probably less than 10 years. These are the most highly valued companies in the world today, and they were 10, 12 years ago, or even less. They were actually tech startups. So that's the vision that we have as we do all the work that we're doing. We've 8 startups have actually gone through the program in our accelerator hub. ISEC, a company that is less than 5 years old, has actually signed a turnkey deal with NIPS. NIPS is the interbank settlement system. A turnkey deal to have the software that they developed on financial authentication utilized on the NIPS platform to be used by all the banks in the country. And when you see the young men that actually developed this software, you'd be just amazed at what is possible. Africana Computers, they came up with a solution, EPOM solution, to measure, to really support the delivery of the sale of petrol or PMS in petrol stations across the country. They've raised $40,000 to complete their backup solution. Client Devote, they've negotiated an $800,000 investment. These Nigerians are under 30 years old as I speak to you today. So just being incubated, being supported in taking their ideas from an idea into a commercially viable entity is what this accelerator hubs that we have put in place are doing. We are incubating about 70 tech startups. And we have the potential through these 70 startups and more to generate at least 10,000 direct and indirect jobs across the country. These are just some logos of some of the companies that we're working with in the Idea Hubs. And while there is a high failure rate in this innovation industry, we need to just make sure that we are having a very healthy pipeline, hundreds of companies going through these hubs, not only the government-inspired hub, but there are a number of other hubs across the country, Venia hubs, 440NG, Co-Creation Hub. There is a good ecosystem of innovation hubs that are being built, particularly for the ICT sector, for software development, and really what is happening is phenomenal in terms of the growth that we are seeing. So we've supported, let me talk about Demo Africa. The way that a number of these tech startups raise their money is that they get a chance to make what is called an elevator speech. You have, just imagine you're in an elevator with a CEO or somebody that you have is from when you get to the ground floor to when you hit the 20th floor, maybe 3-4 minutes. And you've got to make a pitch to these investors so that they'll be interested enough to actually give you some seed money to continue to develop your company. Demo Africa in Africa today is the largest coming together of innovators, software entrepreneurs, and the investor community. This was something that was started in, Demo Africa is a Silicon Valley brand. Demo is a Silicon Valley brand. They are their maiden event.